Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Off-Season 365 podcast sponsored by Dynasty Athletic Performance and powered by NC Football Connections. Today, we have a great guest, a special guest, Coach David Bowser, Special Assistant to Head Coach, Inside Linebackers Coach at Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's always a great time catching up with Coach Bowser. But before we begin, Coach Bowser, welcome to the show and congratulations on the historic season.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, sir. Great to see you again. Always fun to catch up with you. Very blessed. Coach Flowers has built a great product at John C. Smith over these last 3 years. Feel fortunate to be with him for the last two. We went to a bowl game the year before. This year we were 8-2. We were ranked in the nation at one point. We also saw a lot of good things happening at John C. Smith with some very talented young men and a great coaching staff. So I thank you, and I'm glad to be here this morning.
Well, thank you for your time, Coach. Over the holidays, there's a lot of stuff going on. Family time is important. Recruiting. College football games, rest. So
Yes,
appreciate you for making time for us.
always. Thank you, my friend. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, Coach. So before we begin into our deep dive into everything college athletics, high school athletics, etc., give our viewers a quick snapshot of your journey to Johnson C. Smith.
Yes, sir. So I feel very blessed. After finishing up at NC State in 1992, my first job was at Garner High School, working for Hal Stewart. It was a great experience. I spent 3 years there. Then I went down to Anson County and worked for Coach Fred Davis down there. So my first two jobs I was very blessed to be a part of some very successful programs that went deep in the playoffs, had some great football players and young men that come along, and worked with some coaches that expanded and were successful in their own right when they moved on. And then eventually went to Fayetteville. Got an opportunity to be a head football coach at Westover High School. Very tough conference. People have to understand Fayetteville football at that one point, man, that was a 10, 15-year stretch that was some great football. It's still
Yes, it
playing
was.
caliber, but it was just they had fewer schools back then, and that was their conference. It was known as the Mid-South, and that was a tough conference to be in, but it was a great learning experience. The Bob Paroles, the Greg Bryants, got to coach against some great coaches and learn from them, Sappos, just a great experience. And then from there, moved back up to the area, was at Orange High School before I got into college, started out Division III, Hampton Sydney. Great experience. I feel like everybody, if you get your foot in the door with college, if you get a chance to do Division III, because it helps you blend the transition from high school to college, where the love of the game is still the key, and then also just the development of talent at Division III forces you to be creative. It makes you have to understand some things, because sometimes you get that ready-made kid, and folks want to take all the credit for it. No, that was between his parents and God. So you have to understand. But then there's some that you can help grow and develop in the talent. So that was a plus. And then I spent 20 years at Fayetteville State University, worked for Kenny Phillips. We were blessed to win 3 championships there. Then worked a couple of years for Lawrence Kershaw. And then Richard Hayes, who has done an outstanding job at Fayetteville State now, was with him. So I've been really blessed. And then went to St. Augustine's in Raleigh, was excited to get back home, have an opportunity to finally be a head coach. Spent 3 years there, and then was released. And that's a part of the profession. That's some things people kind of run from and be ashamed. But you got to understand, in this profession, if Belichick and Saban can get let go at places, guess what? It doesn't make you a bad coach. It's just a part of the process. And then, like I said, I've been very blessed now to be going into my 3rd year with Maurice Flowers at John C. Smith University.
Absolutely, and what I value most about your career is that you've had an opportunity to experience all levels. I mean, like you mentioned, as a player, NC State, at the Division I level, and then you earn your keep in the high school ranks. Very competitive area. I mean, from the 910, 919, we definitely get
Yes.
that. Division III, Division II, and here we go. So with that being said, Coach, in your eyes, how has the college football landscape changed over the last 20 years?
Well, I'll say this, man. The thing that happens, and it happens right before your eyes. You can't believe that it used to be a time where the foundations of college programs were going into the high schools and getting guys. And like I said, bringing them in, you develop them. If you're blessed to be at the level where you can get a high tier guy, they come in and you watch them grow. More so, you're helping them mold into becoming a professional, and then they're blessed to become a professional because the talent is there. They just got to range it in. But what's happened now, right before our eyes, is that a lot of college recruiting is right within the colleges at the different tiers. And so high school kids and families and coaches are feeling kind of slighted right now, but it's just that the process has changed. There's always been transfers. It was just that transferring wasn't as obvious. Now when they incorporated the portal, basically what you do is you announce, hey, I'm going to transfer. Back 20 years ago, you used to hear, you'd be like, somebody might pick up the phone and call you and be like, hey, I think Chris is going to leave us after spring practice. If you want to get in touch with him, here's his number. That's kind of how it worked. But the NCAA now, you have to put yourself in the portal. So now and more people have options. So kids are getting re-recruited. So in the process of getting re-recruited, the high school athlete kind of gets bumped back a little bit now because, I'll give you an example. Our season ended in November, and once the portal opened, our month of December was recruiting transfers. Now we're still watching film and looking at high school guys. We went to the All-Star game practices at the Shrine Bowl, the East-West game. We'll be at the 9-1-2-5-2 practices. So you still do all of that. But our main thing was, getting those kids who were looking to transfer at mid-semester on campus in that break. And then when we come back in January, you go full tilt to wrap up and lock in on high school kids.
Nice.
And so when you look at it, when you say what's changed, I can remember, it's and not even 20 years ago, less than 6 or 7 years ago, it'd be a playoff game and I'm camped out, man. I'm going to watch Middle Creek play Wake Forest. And you look along that sideline, man, and there's probably about 40 high school, college coaches that are there because recruiting is going on. When Dexter Lawrence was still playing, Middle Creek had a couple of great athletes. You're standing there next to Clemson, NC State, Chapel Hill, East Carolina. So that's what's kind of changed now is that the months of November and December are spent more transfer kids getting that attention and getting recruited. And then January, for my level, Division II, we kind of get that thing really revved up to go with high school kids pushing into signing day. And then the other thing too is kids have to remember signing day on our level has been extended all the way out to like August the 1st. So as now you'll see a lot of schools will be coming back through the building in the spring looking for guys that may be available. It used to be it ran till April 1st. That's why that window always felt so tight. But even with some of the things I tell kids, don't feel like, February 5th, 2025 signing day is the end of the world. That's really just going to be the beginning because then we're going to see who's available and we'll start reevaluating and we'll start moving those chess pieces again. So what's changed is the recruiting calendar on the levels have started earlier, but they also last a little longer if you're high school. So you shouldn't get discouraged when February 5th comes. Just know that that next wave of recruiting is going to come because most of November and December is spent recruiting transfers.
Excellent point. And you mentioned the whole transfer thing. I mean, I vividly remember when when I made my transfer, me and my brother, man, I transferred from D2 to D1. The penalty was you had to sit out the year. So to see these guys be immediately eligible
Right.
is surreal. But kudos to the college programs for capitalizing on the talent and flipping their roster in a hurry. So great point there. So since we're on recruiting, what can, in your opinion, what can high school student athletes do to improve their chances of being recruited by a college football program?
Okay, that's a great question because I think what's gotten lost in this is the traditional factor. Once again, we're talking about that 20-year period. If you remember, there was a time that at one point football camps used to be a week long, maybe 3-4 days. You come in, you stay the night, you stay on campus, and then all of a sudden they became 1 days. And where you come in, you work out, they basically test you, put you through some skills, drills and stuff. And so what happens is I always tell high school kids and coaches, get your kid to go to a variety of campuses. You know, it's good to go to per se the Power Four camps and everything, but look at the numbers that are going to be there, and then look at who's working with you. So a lot of times you'll go to those camps, but they got Division II coaches there, they got FCS coaches there, and that's who's going to be working you. High school
Yep.
coaches will be working you out. All right, so you're not really getting coached up. You may be getting evaluated, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of numbers there. But you can go to a FCS camp. Then I know a lot of people now started doing these mega camps where you go to a central location, they bring a whole bunch of schools in, or go to the Division II, go to the D3 camps that are going on as well. And you will be amazed that now you're going to be working with that actual coach, and they'll get a feel for you. They'll get to know you, because at the end of the day, you know this, you've experienced it. The greatest thing in recruiting, the most comfort level recruiting, is the relationship you build with either the actual recruiter or the position coach. And that's what kind of got lost in this now. You know, it used to be a time coaches got unlimited where they could go meet with kids. You go do home visits. You can go see them every Friday. Now they put stipulations. You get a certain number of opportunities to visit with them. So when these coaches are looking at when they're going to get out and who they're going to go see, they have to be real strategic in the visits that they put out there. So I say to the kids and the parents and the high school coaches, flip that thing. If there's a Saturday that you may be able to drop by, say UNC Charlotte, and then drop down to John C. Smith as well, and then drop over to Davidson. So you're talking about 3 schools in the same county that play football that are all within about 20 miles of each other.
Yeah.
You know, teach the kids to get a chance to, hey, get yourself accessible to people. Another thing that I would say that's changed in this is everybody does a lot on highlights. So when you're doing your huddle, you're doing your highlights, go through, be real strategic.
Mm-hmm.
Put your plays on that catch my eye first. Like if you got
Immediately.
something you do, put that on the front end. Don't worry about the sequence of the games on your schedule. Put your highlights that really stick out, that's gonna make me keep watching you. Put those on the front end and then continue through. Because what happens is some guys will just put, it'll be like a 2 yard gain. Yeah, you ran from one side to the other with that. Now, the first thing I'm saying is, so you don't have home run speed. You can't make people miss. No, put those plays on there that show me you can make people miss. Then, if about play 16 or 17, if you show me your athleticism, your hips, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that, then that may keep my attention. But if the best I see you do early on is you're just running sideline to sideline, I'm saying he's not explosive. But you may be explosive. I just never got to those plays. So I always say put your home runs on there first. If you're a football player in the secondary and you've got some picks, put them on the front. You know, I don't want to see that clip where the ball's thrown and you're running with the guy, but it cuts off because I can't tell if the ball went out of bounds. The dude may have caught it. Go ahead and catch my eye early. Don't make me have to guess. Okay. So I would just say what you got to do now is go visit a lot of different places, open yourself up to your recruitment. Don't be so dogmatic in where you think you got to go or where you should
Mm-hmm.
be going, because the process has changed so much in recruiting now. Make yourself available and accessible to other schools and other levels so you can get a true assessment.
Excellent, excellent. And that's gonna, take me to my next question. So the focus is on the student athlete, which we definitely understand, and ultimately it's their decision, right? But how can us high school coaches help our student athletes along the process? Like, what can we
Okay,
do
well,
to improve that?
I think that a lot of the coaches, especially yourself, have done a great job of this, keeping the open lines of communication with us based on the relationships that you have. And the tougher thing that's going to have to be done is the honest assessment conversation with kids. You know, if you've got a kid and they're truly a Division II player, they need to know on the front end, hey, you're a Division II player. Not that you can't get developed, not that we miss sometimes on all levels, because you miss on the highest end, you miss on the lowest end. But the fact that the windows now are so tight, guys have to early be realistic in the opportunities and never slight or look down on any type of offer. Which, once
Mhm.
again, like I said, that's why I really appreciate the relationship we've had, because even from the time you were at Millbrook and every move you've made, you've always, in evaluating talent, you look at it and be like, hey, coach, I really see this guy as this type of player. And you'll give an honest assessment of where their strengths and their weaknesses are. Because a lot of times, what we want to do is we want to be able to get our kids placed so we can hold on to the kids that we already have coming through the pipeline. Because I mean, recruiting trickled down to high school. People can be
Absolutely.
as naive as they want, but we understand you guys are trying to hold on to your kids as well because you got other high schools that
Yeah.
they want to list. Hey, we signed 20 kids. Yeah, you may have signed 20 kids, but only 4 or 5 panned out. And that's how many were really going to pan out was the 4 or 5. But we just have to be honest in our assessment. That helps. And then number two, let your kids know your academics now are going to help you further than you realize. Because especially when
Yes.
you're talking about FCS, Division 2, and Division 3, if we get a kid, they got a 3.8 GPA, they got good film. So now we know this kid's going to be able to get some academic money. They're also going to be able to get some football money. They may even qualify for financial aid. Now, their package for us is better because we can save money to go get another football player. Now, if this kid's real talented, but they're right on the borderline of being eligible, or if they are eligible, they don't qualify for academic money or anything. Now we got to make a decision, because do we invest 15,000 in this kid and we're not sure if they're going to be here the whole time?
Mhm.
So those things I always say, hey, emphasize the academics as well, and understand as long as you're going to school and it's a zero balance, as long as you're going to school and you're not having to take out loans or very few loans, then you're getting your education taken care of. And that's the business side of it too. So also blend the business side into it to let these kids understand, because you could be a very good football player, a great student. You go to an Ivy League school and you play football, man. When you're done, you sitting there now, you got an Ivy League degree. You get a chance to go to one of these academies and you're taken care of. And then year 3, they're giving you this information, and then you go on. I said, you got to look at every
Yeah.
opportunity. Don't turn your nose up to something because you feel like I got to be at this place and that place hasn't shown you any interest. So I think also coaches just got to have realistic conversations with their kids so that they're not upset. And I know parents are going to, have sometimes a certain feeling, but they'll respect and appreciate you in the long run because you told them the truth, and then they won't get caught by surprise in this recruiting process.
It's funny that you said that. Something that I've always appreciated about my high school coaches and even college coaches is their honesty. And I'll admit, at that specific time, it was hard,
Yeah,
but I see it now,
yeah.
and I've always appreciated those coaches and people I truly respect for their honest assessment of everything. So you definitely brought up a good point there. But you also brought up parents, and we all been there before. What can parents do to support their children during the recruiting process?
Well, I think the biggest thing parents can do is they have to sit down with their child and they can say to them, hey, look, you pick 5 dream schools. Like, if you could
Mhm.
be anywhere where you want to see yourself on that stage, pick them. Then come back and say, all right, well, if this isn't going to happen, what would be the next steps? And then parents really need to be engaged in the recruitment process. It's great that the high school coaches will take the kids on the visits, because we know the coaches, y'all are already invested, been there myself as well. But parents, you need to be there so you can get a chance to meet the people who are going to be responsible for your child for the next 4 or 5 years. And now, the way the NCAA is headed, it may be 6 years. So you're talking about not just from a football perspective, but where they're going to be living at. What is the graduation rates? What's the retention rate? All these questions are important because your child's going off to school. You're dropping them off, and if all you're asking them is, "Well, how was football practice?" or "How's this going?" You're missing the mark, because that's where they're living now. That's like their home. When you go off to colleges, we know that becomes your home now. That's and the
Yes,
guys that are
yes,
around you, the coaches, the lady in the cafeteria, your professors, that becomes your immediate nucleus now. So you definitely want to be somewhere where you know that people are going to have your best interest besides just the football. And I want to step back to say something too about this, is that um, parents need to be grateful for their high school coaches that are able to show them the path, not make the decision for your child,
right.
but
Yeah,
show them the path. There's a big difference. I've seen a
big
lot of
difference.
coaches, they're left to make the decision, and that shouldn't be the way. They should be
Mhm.
only showing you the path, and then you as a family should come together and make that type of decision. So I think the parents' involvement needs to be more than just the football part of it,
Right.
but the location, the class sizes, the nutrition, all of those things, because that works on your child as a whole person. And that's going to develop how you move forward. And you know this, when you left from ECSU and you moved on to East Carolina, the whole dynamic changed. You go from a
Everything.
small environment to almost 30,000 students. Your class
Mm,
size, everything changes. And then the demand at Division One, your
mm,
early mornings, late evenings, and you got to fit classes in there.
mm.
So people sometimes, I don't think they realize that time management, that's something else parents are going to be able to have to teach their kids about, because your child's going to be able to go to class. It's 50 minutes. It's not like a regular 7 class day. You in there for 50 minutes.
50 minutes.
Next time we get back together, you might have 40, 50 pages of schoolwork that's got to be done, but you still got to lift. You still got to go to work, player-led practices. Then you still got to go sit in film sessions and meetings with your position coach. And then you may have offensive, defensive meetings. And if you're on special teams, as you know, that coach wants his time. So he wants to be able to meet. So in a 24-hour day, there's a lot of, I'm not going to never call it pressure, because it's never pressure. It's something that you wanted to be a part of. So if you
Right.
signed up for this, it's never pressure. It's just expectations. So there's a lot of expectations of you in that 24-hour day. And parents need to be able to help your child manage that time, because the schoolwork's still going to have to get done. That professor appreciates everything you're doing on Saturday. They probably come to the games as well, but they got a job to do too. And they're evaluated just like the coaches are. Why you got so many failures? Why you got so many D's? So they have expectations of you as well. And parents need to be able to help their children manage and navigate through that as well. Even if you're a parent that your child's a first generation college student, those questions, to take some of that pressure off of them, is still important. You may not fully have experienced it, but you still understand and know your child better than anybody. And you'll be able to tell if the academic side is weighing too much, if the football is weighing too much, if the social is weighing too much. And so you need to engage with them more than just on the athletic side of things, but focus on also their academics and their personal growth as they're in college.
And you brought up a good point. That transition from a Division 2 to a Division 1 was a huge jump, especially being from a small rural area. And the reality of the matter is something that I like to mention to student athletes is you have to be realistic with what you're seeking. Because a colossal classroom, a lot of people don't really understand, but a big classroom is completely different from a small classroom where your teacher know your name.
Yes,
The big classroom, you're sitting in the seat. Well, guess what? The professor don't know who you are, but you are absent if you're not in that seat. And they
that's
don't
it.
care to know who you are unless you approach them and build that meaningful relationship. But when you go to a smaller classroom setting where the professor know who you are, and if you're struggling, instead of the student, reaching out to the professor can reach out to you to check in. So it is very different, and even on the football stage as well, like you just said, you have colossal programs where you're traveling all across the country, and I mean I can't even tell you how many plane trips I was on from a Greenville to a Texas to
Yeah,
a to a Mississippi, right? Oh, by the way, I also have a term paper I need to turn in on time, and that professor don't really care about that stuff, right?
that's it.
So that's very valid points, and I do think that more and more college bound student athletes need to hear more of those stories.
They got
Um, Absolutely. But let's segue to the coaching, and again, you've been in this thing for quite some time, and things have changed. So how, in your opinion, how has the coaching profession changed over the past 20 years?
Okay, so my first coaching job was in 1992. So when I look at this, man, I'm just amazed that getting ready to go into my 33rd year of
Wow,
this.
congrats on that.
It is amazing. But the biggest thing that I look at, one, I'll say this, is that I'll never forget the very first time I went to the Greensboro High School Coaches Clinic. And when I went, the number of minority coaches at the convention clinic was few. Okay. Then on top of that, there weren't that many minority head coaches in North Carolina. So this is what I'm looking at the Greensboro Clinic. And in your mind, now all of a sudden it kind of changed because this is your profession. When you're a student athlete, you don't really think about those things a lot because you're thinking about the game. You want to play. You're
Yep.
thinking about your teammates. So you look at those type of things. But when you get into the profession, and now I fast forward this and I look at the number of head coaches that are minorities now, I think that's awesome. The fact that, you look at staffs now and it's like you can see a whole high school staff and there may be the majority are minorities. So you're looking at growth. So what I've seen in profession is I've seen growth on that level. The other thing I've seen growth on is I think that attention to detail, the way coaches prepare. When I love going to watch you guys practice, like I said, I look at the job that y'all have done at Southeast Raleigh, man, and it's phenomenal. I think that Southeast Raleigh about 10 to 15 years ago was a really good program. And then the coaches, as you move on and do different things, some got into administration, some coaches retired. The attention that a Southeast Raleigh needs kind of dropped off a little bit. Coach Harden, he comes back, becomes the principal. He helped build success at Southeast Raleigh. So he goes and gets somebody that was successful there as a player that understands the culture and the environment. And then he brings in a great coaching staff. I remember when I came in the building last year and I'm going from room to room. He's like, "You remember this guy?" I'm like, "Man, I said, what you I see you in the build." And I'm like, "Coach, you're gonna be all right." And it showed. So what I've seen the change in this profession is that a lot more of us are getting the opportunities that we so rightfully deserve. Now, I still, at the end of the day, I believe, and I always stand by it, that the most qualified person, and that's always subjective sometimes too,
Right.
because I've always heard, and this was one of the things Coach Sheridan said one time. Uh, when we were talking about me wanting to be in this profession, he said, "Don't ever let somebody tell you, hey, you lack experience," because he told the guy, he said, "Well, if you say that and that's your philosophy, then I would have never got the opportunity at Furman, and then I would have never been at NC State." So everybody deserves an opportunity. And there were times that I look back on it, man, and I just am so grateful to see you guys and where it's headed and where this profession is headed. Is because you guys are now getting quality opportunities to grow in this profession. So that's the first thing I've noticed. The second thing is the quality of the coaching that kids are getting now. When you go watch a practice and you see practice scripted out on the high school level, actual blocks and periods of things being worked, because that's going to get them ready for when
Yep.
they move to college, because you got a certain number of hours, you got to get this in. And, so those things are great. And then the other thing, too, the third thing that I like more than anything is that social media for the good
For the
has
good.
allowed us to connect with different areas. So now it may be I can't get out to Oregon, but maybe I can Zoom with somebody at Oregon and pick up some things. And coaches on the college level, they enjoy being able to meet and pour into people, and because they want to meet you, because eventually you may have a kid that they want to recruit. So I think that another plus is we can get those ideas. You used to be able to sit on TV and you're watching Southern Cal play back in the 80s. It's not like I'm gonna be able to pick up the phone and get in touch with Robinson, but social media changed it now where if I see a coach do something schematically and I like it, now we got an opportunity that we can connect and I can get that information. I tell people coaches clinics at a college level are nice to go to if you want to go watch practice and pick up some things. But if you really want to get polished, just reach out to them and ask them if you can come up as a staff and spend a couple of days there and watch position meetings. Watch how they do film session, how they meet when they go defense, offense, and special teams. And that's where you're going to pick up the nuggets, because no coach is going to go to a clinic and tell you the nuts and bolts of what they do. They're going to give you the vanilla
Yeah.
because they know that the coach from their opponent is going to be at that same clinic and they might be sitting in there. So they're not going to give you the nuts and bolts like that. But if you go and visit with them, watch, sit with them, then you get to pick their brains at another level. So I think that's where you can make those investments that's really changed, that you get the opportunity to go visit with these places and use it as professional development, which it is. Just like if you go to a teachers conference, it's the same thing. If you tell your principal, your AD, hey, I want to go spend a couple of days down at Clemson, I want to spend a couple of days at John C. Smith. I just want to watch how they do things because it's going to make us better. And no principal or athletic director doesn't want their coaches to get better. Just like they want their teachers to get better, they should want their coaches to get better. So professional development isn't just limited in that way. And we do the same thing. We'll pick out and we'll go spend some time with because we want to learn. And that's the one thing about, as long as you're in this profession, just know that you still want to learn. Think about when you and I came along, how running the football was how you won football games, and how much people rather throw now to set up the run. It used to be the opposite.
Opposite.
And to set up the pass. Now people throw. They'll throw hitches, and they're talking about, oh, that hitch, that's like running a tall sweep. We already got on the edge. That's how they sell it to you. Now I came from a different area. I played the wing tee, man. My high school coach, we want 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So I might go for it on 4th and 1 because we feel good about it. So it's just the evolution of the game.
Absolutely. What advice would you give a college coach looking to advance in their career? I mean, you had a chance to, positional coach, a head coach, assistant head coach. What advice would you give a college coach?
I always say just be the assistant. As far as how when you become a head coach that you'd want your assistants to be. I really pride myself on the fact that in this day and age, the fact that I was able to spend 20 years at Fayetteville State and to have worked for 3 head coaches at that school, the one thing I always tried to do was give them everything, all the energy that they needed for us to be a successful program. Another thing I always tell coaches is, even though we have the duties and responsibilities, all good head coaches, they're going to assign different duties and responsibilities. But if there's something that you've got experience with, if it's something that's crossed your path and it can help the program, don't just sit back on it. If a different person's got that responsibility and you can give them a little wisdom, go share it with them. And then if they need assistance with it, help them with it so it still makes the program go. And if it's something that you're responsible for and you not totally comfortable, don't feel like you look weak by asking the head coach or one of the other assistants, hey, can y'all help me with this? Because what happens is if it doesn't work, when you get in that next staff meeting, you're going to have to try to explain why it didn't work. So why not be proactive? So the one thing I always say is be the assistant that you would want if you're the head coach. 2, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. A lot of people now want to put themselves out there. It's just crazy. I'm like, you're not. Hey, look, I look at it and I give you the best example. There was people that were like, don't take don't take the St. Augustine's job. Don't take the St. Augustine's job. And the last conversation I had before I took it was with Coach Sheridan. And Coach Sheridan was very honest. He looked and assessed it. He said, I've done my homework. I've Googled this. He said, I don't know. But what I do know is you'll never know if you don't take the chance.
Absolutely.
And as you saw, there were positives that were happening, but there were so many things that people didn't understand at how far behind. It's a matter of going somewhere and you're in the ballpark, but when you ain't even got to the street where the stadium is yet, you got to know what you're working with. So the foundation was needing to be laid at a different level in that situation. Then somebody else may go to a situation and they have success quickly and people be like, that's a changer. No, you got to understand everybody's not starting at the same place. Just like right now, the comparisons are going to happen. Watch and see between Vic and Deshaun Jackson.
Yes.
But people don't realize you're talking apples and oranges. It's 2 different situations. The levels of the playing field. But what you need to look at is where the development and the growth is. That's what you need to see. People are going to immediately assume that both these guys are supposed to come in here and sprinkle pixie dust. No, what they're going into some tough situations, and they're going to have to get their bearings about them to move forward. So when I look at it, I just say, hey, understand the dynamic of what you're going into, which I understood fully, and I assessed it by talking to different levels of folks. But the opportunity was there, and you don't
Yes.
fail if you try. And I know I left it better than I walked into, and those are the things that you look at. And so, yeah, be willing to take that opportunity. Put yourself out there is one thing that I'll say to any college coach that wants to grow is put yourself out there, man, because you're not going to fail only if you don't learn. If you don't take that and say, hey, I'm going to put this in the back of my mind for future reference and how to assess things. So you can't fail unless you don't try. That's the only way I look at that.
And let's apply that same advice to high school coaches. I mean, after all, this is a high school like podcast. What advice would you give high school coaches looking to advance in their career, whether position coach to coordinator to head coach to athletic director? What advice would you give high school coaches looking
Same
to
thing.
advance their
And I
career?
can only speak from experience. I'll tell you the craziest thing. So here I am. I'm coaching at Garner High School, and all of a sudden, Anson County has an opening, and it's going to get me at the time. I'm thinking, closer back to Charlotte, and they had a football position open. I applied for it. I interviewed, and then the funny thing became, they were like, "Hey, look, we need a head basketball coach." I'm like, "What?" But but what he said to me was, and it made sense. He said, "Listen." He said, we're a one county high school. Our talent overlaps. He says, so the majority of your basketball team is going to wind up being your football players. So you've coached basketball at Garner. I was a JV head basketball coach 2 years. So here I am. Now I'm 24 years old and I'm a head high school varsity basketball coach. But everything that Fred told me was true because of my 15 kids that were on the football team, 12 of them 12 of them on my basketball team had played football for us, and they wound up being the heartbeat of that team. And so I look back on it and I say, put yourself out there, because we always ask our kids to be uncomfortable. So why can't we be uncomfortable? Because it'll make us better. It'll force you. So now here I am. I'm finding myself. I'm down there at Clemson, not only checking out the football stuff, but I'm sliding over there to the gym and watching some stuff that they're doing with basketball so I can bring that back to what we had to do. So it was like, if you want to move up, one, don't be afraid to put yourself out there because you see mistakes as things that you can learn from. And a good leader, and you'll know what kind of person you work for, they're not going to just rip you if it doesn't work. They should help you figure out, hey, so next time, how do we navigate through this? How do we make sure this doesn't happen? Because you're going to see things again. It's like some experience, and that's even play calling, as as an OC. You see something, and it might be 3 weeks later in another ball game. In the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I remember this. So this is how I'm gonna handle it this time. Then the other thing is, let the people who you are working for know your aspirations. Now they monitor you and work with you differently. Just like we're working with Coach Flowers now, he knows that my goal is to eventually be a head college coach again. So we work in a fashion of we can communicate. When there were some opportunities that I was able to talk to some schools about this past year, he knew the whole step of the way. Don't let it be a surprise. The communication part's the key because as long as the trust factor stays there, it's fine. And then when those jobs didn't work out, I let him know. And I said, Coach, let's go ahead and push forward, moving for getting ready for the next year. So what I always say is, one, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and be willing to learn from what doesn't go right. And then secondly, with whoever your leadership is, communicate with them what your goals are so that they can help you along the way to meet your goals. Because you'd be amazed. A person that can help you get that opportunity, they'll be sitting in a room as an AD, and they'll know ahead of time because another AD, they could be at a conference AD meeting, and the AD says, well, I might be looking for a football coach in 2 months. My coach may be leaving. Then that AD at your school can say, hey, you need to talk to so-and-so because he would be a very good coach, and he can speak on behalf of what you've done. But if you keep it to yourself and you just shooting your stuff out on the sly, now they're going to call because they're going to call and they're going to ask, be like, hey, did you know so-and-so applied for our job? So don't do it that way. Just put it out there. And it doesn't say you're not happy where you are.
Correct.
It's that you have aspirations and goals. And anybody that may have people on their staff. There's some people who are lifelong assistants and love it and enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with that. Then there's some coaches that have aspirations to move up the ranks. But you're gonna need some help along the way. And I think
Yes.
if you're just transparent with it, you'll be fine. Don't be afraid to make the mistakes. Because here's the beautiful thing on the flip side of taking those chances. When you do stuff that seems outside the box and is successful, you're seen as creative. You're seen as a genius. You think about all these young head coaches in the
Yes.
NFL, the McVays and all them.
Hmm.
They did something, and somebody
Yes.
thought, "Hey, this guy, this, and this," and that's where they got the opportunities they got. So you just got to be willing to take the chances and learn and grow from them.
Absolutely, Coach. And we're running out of time here, but before we do that, I always like to ask my guests the same question. Um, Again, your span has, your coaching career has covered a span of 30 plus seasons. What advice would you give your year one self?
That one thing I would tell my year one self is slow down. That's the one thing I say. And when you say slow down, it doesn't mean you're not moving, but I could just think about in my mind in year one, I had already figured out, hey, this is my next move. This is this is my that. And it's like, no, embrace where you are, enjoy where you are. And it doesn't mean you're not paying attention to what's going on around you or any future opportunities, but never look back on this and not realize what you've been engaged in. So, my year one self, hey man, just enjoy where you are. Then, number two, get to connect with people who are on the same level with you. In other words, a lot of times guys young in the profession, they want to go meet these big time coaches. They want to go meet head coaches. What you need to do is you need to meet the guys who come in at the same time as you or a few years ahead of you, because what happens is those are the relationships that when moves happen, you're going to be remembered. So what I mean by that is if you and another guy come in at the same time, let's say he becomes a coordinator before you become a coordinator. Then all of a sudden, he's now a head coach. Well, what if he needs a coordinator? Now he's going to remember, hey, man, I've had a great relationship with this guy. We've always talked. We bounce things off each other. We've done this at the Greensboro Clinic, or we've saw each other. And so you build those relationships. Now they're going to remember you when you move to the next move. And the reason why I know that's a great example to give is I'm only going to speak from experience, is that when Coach Flowers came to Fayetteville State, his first tenure as our offensive coordinator, he and I would sit and we would just talk, and we'd be anything, man. It could be family, it could be football, it could be we both were big pro wrestling fans because we grew up in Charlotte. So, people before there was the Hornets and the Panthers, the only professional sports we knew was wrestling and NASCAR. So we would joke around and talk about that stuff. And then all of a sudden, when I was in need of a job and looking to bounce back, Coach Flowers reached out to me and was like, hey, man, I want you to come here. And he told me up front, he said, look, I already got a very good staff. I have an associate head coach. I got an assistant head coach. I was like, Coach, I'm good, man. He's like, no, we're not going to dismiss the experience that you have. So they created the position, brought it in. They said, we're going to make you special assistant to the head coach. So he wanted me to know I still had value. I just not going to bring you in with 30 years experience as a position coach. Though I would have been fine with that because I'm just glad to be with somebody who I could trust and I knew. And that's why I said the parallels are we were both assistants at one time
Yes.
at the same place, but we could sit in the office and just chat up on stuff and we would bounce ideas off of each other and things of that nature. And we both got our head job and college opportunities at the same time. And when we were working through our contracts and everything, we could comfortably communicate with each other without feeling like, hey, he know this and he know that. No, we were trying to make sure we were both taken care of in these opportunities. So a young self, get to know not only the people who you think can help you, but also get to know and build good relationships with guys that you can grow with in this profession. Because that's going to be the beautiful thing about it is that 10, 15 years from now, you both could be competing against each other in different roles, or you could be working together in different roles. So build those relationships as you and guys that could grow with you in the profession is something I'd recommend.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to the Offseason 365 podcast. If you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and tell others about us. I'm Coach Simmons with Coach Bowser. We're signing off.
All right. Thank you, bro.